Howdy all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Fall 2022. So this movie may go on and feel similar to the Joseph Gordon-Levitt's movie The Walk or the 2010 movie Frozen, where this movie is to really terrify certain people if they are to have problems with heights. For me watching this movie, I was very tense throughout this film just because I'm like, man, this movie, it's so high up. It's so high. I'm like, man, this movie. But yeah, so we have some twists and turns in this film that I really did like, but this movie is so focused on climbing this tower that I'm like, man, this movie is a long-winded film. It's a long stretch of a film. Uh, and there are some twists and turns, but like, man, do you really just have to get through a lot of dead parts in this movie also? Speaking of dead, yeah, there are some things in this movie that may like surprise you. And also, we have Jeffrey Dean Morgan that is to be in this movie in kind of like the beginning, early parts of it, and then towards the end of the film. So if you're expecting Jeffrey Dean Morgan to be in a lot of this movie, not really. Like he's not in any of the climbing part, or like he's not a big character in this film. But why would you go on and expect that anyways? So with that said, I would say that this movie is okay. It's okay, but I would not go on and spend $20 on Amazon to see it right now. I just wouldn't. I went on and saw like a bootleg version of this movie to just check it out, because I figured that like this movie would not be that difficult to go on and like see via bootleg version and whatever. So like I got the gist of the movie. There were certain dark parts where I'm like, I can't really 100% tell what all is going on in this film. But I would write this movie off as just kind of being an okay film. Um because of course like it focuses on the climbing parts, because what else can you do? So teeing it up, what exactly is this movie about? Where can you go on and find this film if you want to find a bootleg version of it, or just a premium access, whatever version of it that is to be for free? Uh, let's go into the app so I can get that out of the way. First off, C Movies app. So you can go and probably go into a Google Play Store and find some equivalents of these certain apps. Like Yes Movie, I think does have like a Google Play Store thing, or uh, TV Crush is to possibly be 1, 2, 3 movies via a Google Play Store, but I'm not sure how long that'll last for, or even if that app still exists on a Google Play Store. You can probably find there's a lot of times where there's certain apps that have like the same name and similar software. So there's that for you. So who knows how long they'll last for, but they exist. So, but moving on to the next app, Fox HD Movies. Fox HD Movies will, of course, have a title or a logo that says Fox HD Movies, but the title will say Play 1080p HD Movies. And then the third app, of course, would be a possible Google search to search the words TV Crush. And TV Crush, of course, will have a new logo and a new title, be HD Movies 1, 2, 3 movies, and we'll have a logo that says HD Movies with a King Crown off to the side. So, teeing up, what is this movie about? So, this movie is about a tower, B67 TV tower, that is to be taller than the Eiffel Tower. And so I was like, okay, like this is gonna be high. This is gonna be like uncomfortable for me. And so yeah, so Becky and Hunter in the beginning of this film are to be climbing this mountain with a guy named Dan. And after they go on to do that, we have Becky, who is consistently at bars drinking, and Jeffrey D. Morgan's character James is to come in to try to get Becky to kind of move on past her like drinking habit and her depressed ways. So Becky is to meet up with Hunter, her friend that she went rock climbing with before, and Becky is to be asked by Hunter if she wants to go on with her to this TV tower, which they go on and do. Both of them go on to mention that they're going to climb this to some waitress at this diner and make their way to climb this tower. Neither one of them are to either have like parachutes with them, which would obviously be the thing that I'd be like, why wouldn't these people have parachutes? This is so effing high. So high. And like really when going into this film, man, was I uncomfortable. But so Becky and Hunter decide to climb this tower. They make it to the top, and wouldn't you know it, via the visuals that kind of help us understand what's going on here, the ladder upon this tower is to buckle and break off, and we have these two stuck in this tower. The visual of this poster doesn't look quite right, because by the time that this event happens, we have a switching of characters, and this poster actually is not correct. But it is what it is, I guess, for this poster. I guess they went on to like not know who was on the top of the tower and who was kind of hanging on. But both of them end up getting back into the top of the tower, and we eventually have these two characters give us some twists and turns of this film to find out things about themselves. And so Becky, if she isn't to go on and at the beginning of this film mention the whole words of survival of the fittest, we start to realize how Becky is going to turn into this kind of character who has to really figure out some way or another of how to survive. I say that because we may have both of these characters the whole entire movie, or we may not. So eventually, we're just going to go on and go into spoilers here, because I think it's about that time anyways. So let me know in the comments below how you felt about Fall, if you went on and saw it via the $20 price tag for this movie. Because maybe you just had money to burn or blow or whatever, you know? So if you want to check this movie out, I would not tell you not to spend that money, but I would say, like, wait till it goes on an app somewhere. Or, like, wait till it's, like, at a cheaper price than where it is at right now. So, with that said, let's go into that double five, because it's about that time. Let's go into spoiler time. Spoiler time, it's about the time we spoil this movie. So, beginning of this movie, Becky and Hunter and Dan are rock climbing. So, it seems that Hunter is to not use ropes, and Becky and Dan are. Dan, at one point, is to have Becky jump to him, and we have Dan, and I don't know, like, rock climbing terms of equipment and whatever. Dan at some point is to use this item to go on and get a firm grip of being attached to like a thing of rope and this kind of thing to attach himself to the mountain. And while Dan is to poke his hand into this hole, all of a sudden this bird or this bat comes flying out of it, and Dan ends up getting freaked out, and he ends up falling with this rope kind of barely hanging on to Dan, and Dan is to start freaking out, and Becky and Hunter are just at this point watching on to see Dan fall to his death. And there's nothing they could have done. There wasn't enough time. Dan just falls to his death, kind of like in the beginning of Cliffhanger, in some ways. So Becky is to make her way back to her place, and is to go on these drink benders consistently, to where she's consistently drinking and drunk and whatever. So Jeffrey D. Morgan, who is James, is Becky's father, and so James is now telling Becky that like she needs to move on from this, like she's just wasting her life away. Would Dan go on and be doing the exact same thing that Becky is doing if Becky had died? Probably not. So Becky, trying to get out of this, is to re-meet up with Hunter, and come to find out Hunter is this social media presenced person, YouTuber, and she does climbing for a living now. So Hunter is to mention to Becky that there, of course, is this tower out there, this B67 TV tower, that they should go on and climb, and it'll really shake Becky's fear of heights now, because she has them now since that whole event. And Hunter is telling Becky that'll do her some good to just kind of go on and do this anyways. So Becky and Hunter go on to this location, and at the very bottom of this tower, they still have phone reception. So Becky and Hunter make their way to this tower because they have to walk there, and they end up seeing a dead animal of sorts and these birds pecking at it. And so Hunter goes on to send out a tweet of this dead animal, and I'm like, I'm sorry, like, do you really think that you can go on and send that off into a social media? And like, anyways. And so Becky, I think, is even to say that it's like, well, are all your like social media like people, are all of them like murderers or like psychos? So Hunter's like, I don't know, like as long as they just keep on keeping on. So Becky, Hunter go on to start climbing up the tower. Hunter tells Becky, hey, if you ever get tired, we can stop at some point and like we can kind of chillax a little bit and then get to climbing again. So Becky and Hunter start climbing up this tower. Becky at some point gets tired, and so they stop. Hunter is to say, hey, what a coincidence that we're stopping right now, because this is roughly the same exact height as the Eiffel Tower. And Becky's like, I really didn't need to know that. And Hunter's like, well, hey, I'm just giving you a perspective. So the further and further up they go, Hunter at some point is to shake the ladder, or is to kind of force Becky to sing this song, or do something to try to get her mind off this, anything. Becky sings this song, ashes, ashes, and we all fall down. Um, like the one like patty cake song. And so when Becky gets the fall down part, Hunter's like, well, that's a weird song to be singing right now. So both of them realize at one point there's this satellite dish in between their climb. So now Hunter is to have to like squeeze between this satellite to climb further, and so is Becky, but they do make it to the very top of this tower. Becky and Hunter, before they make it to even climb this tower, go to this diner to talk to this waitress and ask her, hey, like, why does this tower have this light that blinks on and off? Because they thought that the tower was decommissioned, but the waitress mentions that the reason for that is because the tower is so high, there needs to be a light there to alert airplanes to not crash into it. So that's the whole reasoning. Becky, Hunter make their way all the way up this tower. So they're making these videos, doing these pictures that are kind of them kind of holding on and doing these selfies and whatever. Hunter is telling Becky that anytime she's feeling down, Becky can go on and look at these pictures and feel like that she's really accomplished something here. So these characters now have this backpack with this water bottle, this drone, makeup, and like certain items. So Becky decides she wants to climb down, and Hunter is to kind of let Becky climb down first. Becky climbs down, and she is to be roped to be safe here. All of a sudden, the ladders start. While I'm saying all this, I'm having to remember all of this, and so it's like really just like, this is freaking me out. Just having to imagine all this in my brain again is just like, God, this like it's so like even tensing me up now while I'm doing this review. Just because I have to remember all of this stuff. So Becky is have all these ladders collapse. Becky starts falling, and the backpack that Becky had falls to this satellite. So now Hunter is having to rope up Becky back to the top of this tower, and now there is quite a huge, massive gap from the next available ladder part to where they are, and so now they're stuck up there for a good long while. So now that they're stuck up there, they realize at the top of this tower there is this gun flare. They're like, okay, I don't know how we're going to use this because there's no real like people around this location. So Becky and Hunter notice there's a guy around this location who has this RV. So Dog Walker Dan is calling on his cell phone, walking his dog around this area. Becky and Hunter start chucking their shoes and their socks down there, hoping this guy will notice. And he doesn't really. So Becky and Hunter wait tonight till the night for them to fire off this flare to try to alert these guys that they are up there. So it seems that Dogwalker Dan does, at some point in the night, notice these two are firing off this flare, and Dogwalker Dan just goes to find these two girls' car and steals it, and then walks off, or drives off with their car, and does not help them. So now, when Becky and Hunter were also to get to the top of this tower, Becky was to take the ashes of Dan's and kind of let loose these ashes to spray all into the air. And Hunter ends up crying because it had finally hit her that Dan is now dead. But come to find out, there's much more of a story of that. Because when Hunter needs to go on and take off her shoe, we notice that Hunter has this 143 tattoo on her foot. And Becky at one point was having this dream that she was still with Dan, and Dan would go on and tell her he loved her, but he would tell her by Morse code. And of course, I love you would be 143. So Becky is like, why is this girl having this tattoo? Maybe that's a tattoo of her remembering Dan, not quite sure, we'll figure that out. But come to find out in this story, Becky is to find out that Hunter was to also be with Dan and be kind of cheating on, because I think Hunter had Dan first, and then Dan went on to date Becky, and so Hunter was always jealous that Becky ended up being with Dan, and so, like, there was a whole thing about that. And so Becky was to just go on and just be like, wow, like, that really tarnishes, like, the memory of Dan for me, to basically say that this guy was cheating around on me before we really got together. So Becky and Hunter go on to have this drone. And so they tried to release this drone to trying to get to town to try and send this message. After we have the two of them try and make it to the satellite that has the water bottle and everything. So Hunter is to decide that she's going to go all the way down to where the satellite is because the rope may be long enough. So Hunter goes on to take this rope down, and Hunter tells Becky, it's like, well, hey, like, maybe I'll die here, and, like, maybe, like, I'll deserve it from, like, being with your boyfriend. And so Becky is just like, just go on and just do this. So Hunter gets the satellite, gets the water, starts drinking it, and then has to figure out a way to attach herself and this backpack to this rope again. So Hunter figures out a way to attach herself to this rope, and so Becky is supposedly trying to bring Hunter back up. What happens at some point is Hunter is to slip and fall back to where the satellite is, and now her hands are hurt, so Becky now has to go on and drag Hunter back up here. So we have Becky and Hunter who have been in this environment during the day and during the night, and Becky is having nightmares at one point that Becky wakes up in the middle of the night to see Hunter, who has had birds like peck at her, and Hunter is dead. And Becky is kind of getting attacked by these birds, and she wakes up realizing that this is all a dream, and Hunter is still alive. So there's a whole reason why I'm mentioning this dream right now, with the way this story plays out. Becky and Hunter at one point had also, in this movie, taken Hunter's phone and put a message in the phone and sent the message, hoping that by the time that the shoe lands onto the ground of this desert location, that the message will get sent, because supposedly they had cell service by the very bottom of this tower. Becky takes off her shoe, puts her phone in the shoe, and then just put her bra in the shoe and then tosses it down there. And it's been 24 hours, no one's come, so they're like, well, I guess that thing wasn't sent. So now Becky, at some point now, has to climb up the very highest part of this tower to take off the lighted part and take off this bulb, and have Becky now put this outlet to charge up this drone that had died while they were trying to send the drone out to town. The charge of the drone wasn't good enough, and so they had to retrieve the drone and have it come back to them. So they charge up the drone this time around to get full power, while Becky's now having to climb up this pole, and Hunter is to remind Becky that it's just like pole dancing. Like, okay. What a life that Becky has led. I'm just joking. So Becky, of course, charges up this drone, slides back down. They send the drone out to try to get this message out, and a semi-truck ends up smashing into the drone, and so they don't get the message out. So they're hoping that the semi-truck guy gets out of his truck to go after the drone, but he doesn't. He just goes back to his vehicle after seeing what happened and drives away. No one sees the drone. No one gets the message. So now these two are just kind of left there, just like, what can we do now? Like, we spent all that time just trying to charge up that drone, risking our lives for nothing. Becky and Hunter are to now be like starving and Hunter is telling Becky, it's like, well, hey, like, do whatever you need to do, just eat anything at this point. And Becky's like, what do you mean? Like, we're so high up in the air, there's nothing to eat. What are you talking about? So Becky finally goes on to ask Hunter for her other shoe so Becky can use this girl's other shoe. And Hunter turns to Becky and says, I can't give you my other shoe because I'm not really here. And Becky's like, what? Hunter had gone on and fell to her death and smacked against the satellite. And Becky, who I guess is to have lost her mind for the long stretch of time that she's been here, and now Hunter is now dead. She had fell to her death and bled out. And Becky now realizes that. So Becky starts crying for realizing Hunter is dead. And plus also Hunter justified this to Becky and said, it's like, do you really think that you could have gone on with how scrawny you were to try to, like, pull me up here to the top of this tower? There was no way. So Hunter died because Becky wasn't strong enough, sadly. Now, so Becky at some point is to have these birds start coming for her and start pecking at her, as well as when Becky is to be trying to charge this drone with this outlet, there are birds flying in trying to attack her also. And Becky was freaking out the whole entire time, and Hunter's like, what happened? And she's like, well, yeah, I was getting attacked by these birds. So Becky looks like she is dead, so this bird starts pecking away at her. And so Becky grabs the bird, kills the bird, starts eating it. And so Becky decides to take this rope and climbs down and jumps down to where Hunter is. And now Becky, with her phone, is to try to send a message to her father. And what she does here is Becky takes this shoe and puts this shoe into Hunter's body and is to drop Hunter's body, and Becky is telling Hunter, it's like, I'm sorry that I'm gonna have to drop your body here, but like I gotta make sure that this message gets out. And possibly this will hopefully be the way of Hunter, like, kind of protecting the shoe as the message is going to go out. So Hunter's body falls, and so all of a sudden now Becky is at this satellite dish area, and it seems that the satellite dish thing is starting to wobble. It's starting to possibly give here. And we're possibly thinking that Becky is going to fall to her death. She's going to die, as well as Hunter. So the next thing we see is that James had gone on to get this message, as James at some point had tried to text Becky, had tried to call her, no response. So James, at the end of this film, makes it to this tower where Becky and Hunter was. So James is seeing this body bag, and he starts bursting into tears, assuming the worst, assuming Becky probably had gone on and just decided to jump off and take her life, or had fell from this tower and died. And James is going through a range of different emotions here. But come to find out, this was just Hunter's body, and Becky is in this ambulance getting looked over And wouldn't this person be already be at a hospital by now? Like, I'm sure she's like heavily dehydrated and all kinds of other things. Shouldn't this girl have been rushed to the hospital? So James is now hugging Aunt Becky, and that's really how the movie just kind of rattles off. Becky also is to have her wedding ring or her engagement ring, I'm not sure which one it is, from Dan. And so Becky had taken her wedding ring off to put it onto her necklace. But when Becky was going to do the whole outlet thing at the top of the tower, Becky used her wedding ring to help, like, her be able to charge the drone. And then she charged the drone, and then she went off to go back to where Hunter supposedly was. So that was one thing that I kind of wanted to talk about and finish that up. So with that said, let me know how you felt about Fall if you went on and saw this movie. Uh, yeah, interesting film, but also a very thin film. But I'm just kind of happy now that this review is now done. Because I was just like, man, I have to rethink of all these things, and it was like really just bugging me out during this film. And so luckily, I'm probably even gonna go on and probably do more height films. We'll see. But eventually, I'm done with this one. Or now I'm done with this one, I mean. So, with that said, goodbye, everybody. Goodbye, everybody.